2025 was a terrible year for movies. Not because they were bad, but because they were too good. And that's the problem. Instead of recycling the same cinematic safe space we've grown emotionally dependent on, filmmakers decided to experiment, to innovate, to make me sit there and actually process what I was watching. So today, I want to talk about the worst movies of 2025. The films that failed us the most by being interesting. Let's start with Sinners, a movie that made the absolutely unhinged decision to believe its audience could handle nuance. Characters are forced to choose between preserving their cultural roots or assimilating into dominant cultures. Sammy, the protagonist, is stuck right in the middle. Huge flaw. Horror should be about running from monsters, not grappling with identity and systematic oppression. I came here for blood, not allegory. Oh, and the themes? They're seamlessly integrated into the characters, plot, and setting. From the Jim Crow South to Irish immigration allegories, that's way too cohesive. Where are the random haunted houses and cabins in the woods? Why does everything have to make sense and resonate? It's exhausting watching a film that actually thinks. And don't get me started on that allegory. Vampirism as assimilation? Losing your identity to join the oppressor? Sammy's guitar versus his father's Christianity? Come on, that's genius, which is exactly the problem. Horror should never be this thoughtful. If I wanted to contemplate cultural erasure and heritage, I'd read a book. But Sinners forces me to think while being scared. Disgraceful. In the end, Sinners fails spectacularly at being bad. It dares to be intelligent, thematically resonant, and emotionally powerful when shallow frights would have been so much easier. For that, I condemn it as one of the greatest disasters of excellence. No clear heroes, no clean villains, just people making choices, which is frankly irresponsible filmmaking. Characters actually suffer consequences here. There's guilt, there's reflection. At one point, the film even pauses and lets silence do the talking. Silence. Do you know how dangerous that is in a theater? How am I supposed to scroll on my phone emotionally when the movie expects my full attention? Honestly, Sinners could have fixed all this by just telling us who to root for and adding a speech about what it all means. But no, it trusted us. Big mistake. Next up, Weapons. A movie that dares to feel like it came from a single person instead of a boardroom. There's the social commentary, a mass disappearance of children used to examine systematic failures in law enforcement and education. Huge flaw. Horror should be about ghosts and gore, not exposing how institutions paralyze progress with self-serving priorities. If I wanted to think about real-world problems, I wouldn't be in the movies. Oh, and the narrative, 6 distinct point of views, intricately woven together to explore the ripple effects of a tragedy? That's way too complex. Horror should be simple. One monster, one victim, lots of screaming. But Weapons insists on nuance, forcing me to reflect on flawed human responses. Exhausting. And don't get me started on the insights. The film critiques America's tendency to sensationalize tragedy instead of confronting root causes. It shows how blame and outrage perpetuate horrors rather than solve them. That's genius. Which is exactly the problem. Horror should never be this incisive. If I wanted cultural reflection, I'd read an essay or something. But Weapons forces me to think while being scared. Disgraceful. In the end, Weapon fails spectacularly at being bad. It dares to be intelligent, thematically resonant, and emotionally devastating when mediocrity would have been so much easier. For that, I condemn it as one of the greatest disasters of excellence. The tone shifts, the imagery is unsettling, the symbolism refuses to be explained in a YouTube recap thumbnail. At no point does this movie stop to reassure you that everything is gonna be okay. Which is bold, because movies are supposed to hold your hand, whisper, "Don't worry," and then sell you a sequel. Weapons doesn't do that. It lingers, it haunts, it ends and just leaves. I hate when art does that. Then there's K-pop Demon Hunters. A movie that commits perhaps the most unforgivable sin of all. First mistake. The fans are the actual power source. Huntrix draws strength from genuine connection, while the Saja Boys consume fan energy parasitically. Terrible idea. Everyone knows fans are supposed to be background props, not the literal engine of the story. Making them central to the narrative? That's a mistake. And then there's the contrast. Huntrix embodies sincerity, mutual empowerment, and authenticity. Meanwhile, the Saja Boys represent exploitation and disingenuous parasocial obsession. Huge flaw. K-pop stories should never critique the industry. They should glorify it. But K-pop Demon Hunters insists on showing us the difference between genuine artistry and hollow manipulation. Exhausting. Worst of all, the film exposes the paradox of authenticity in K-pop, how the industry commodifies sincerity as a marketing tool. That's way too real. I don't want my idol stories to critique exploitation. I want them to sell me fantasy. But K-pop Demon Hunters insists on reminding me that authenticity can be manufactured. Disgraceful. In the end, K-pop Demon Hunters fails spectacularly at being bad. It dares to be intelligent, thematically resonant, and emotionally devastating when mediocrity would have been so much easier. For that, I condemn it as one of the greatest disasters of excellence. It's fun without being cynical, bright colors, earnest emotion, music that actually wants you to feel joy instead of irony. The characters like each other. The story isn't embarrassed to be silly. And worst of all, it knows exactly what it is. No greedy reboot, no self-aware apology, just confidence. How am I supposed to take this seriously if it's not ashamed of itself? Ah yes, Avatar 3, Fire and Ash. First mistake, instead of just rehashing the first two films like a proper sequel should, Cameron decided to evolve the story. Spider gets captured again, but this time it's about Quaritch's paternal feelings. Terrible choice. Sequels are supposed to repeat themselves shamelessly, not deepen character arcs. Honestly, how dare he give us progression instead of redundancy? And then there's the themes. Violence, grief, identity, all explored with nuance and emotional weight. Huge flaw. I came here for blue aliens punching robots, not a meditation on hatred and resentment during wartime. Movies should never make me reflect on my own humanity. That's just irresponsible filmmaking. Let's talk about Neytiri. Her journey through grief and hatred culminates in a cathartic moment of compassion. Disgusting. I wanted her to stay angry forever because growth is boring. And Quaritch, his mirrored arc with Jake, explores shifting identities and paternal conflict. Another misstep. Villains should stay one-dimensional. Give me mustache twirls, not existential crisis. In the end, Avatar Fire and Ash fails spectacularly at being bad. It dares to be ambitious, emotionally resonant, and technically flawless, when mediocrity could have been so much easier. For that, I condemn it as one of the greatest disasters of excellence. James Cameron once again showing up to remind us that spectacle, world building, and sincerity can coexist? Disgusting. The visuals are breathtaking. The ecosystems are detailed, the emotional arcs are earned, and somehow, it expects me to care about blue people again. 3 times now. At this point, it's just showing off. We get it, James. You like cinema. We get it. Now, let's talk about Bugonia, a film that looks at traditional narrative structure and politely refuses it. First mistake. They remade Save the Green Planet, and instead of butchering it like any respectable Hollywood studio would, they actually updated it to reflect modern social and political chaos. Terrible idea. Who wants a remake that's relevant? Give me a soulless cash grab any day. But no, Bugonia insists on tackling humanity's self-destruction, systematic classism, and corporate control. Honestly, it's exhausting watching a film that makes sense. Then we have Michelle, the corporate CEO. She's manipulative, polished, and dripping with false heroism. And Teddy, the traumatized conspiracy theorist crushed by the system. Their rivalry is sharp, layered, and thought-provoking, which is a huge problem because when I watch 2 characters argue, I don't want to reflect on society's broken institutions. I want explosions. Instead, Bugonia forces me to think. Unacceptable. And then there's Don, the character who represents the suppressed middle majority, the conscience of the film. He's compassionate, humane, and tragically unheard, which is a huge flaw because apparently the filmmakers thought subtlety was a good idea. If you want to represent the middle majority, just give them a giant speech with fireworks behind them. But no, Bugonia insists on nuance. Disgraceful. And finally, the ending. Michelle's lies turn out to be truths. Humanity collapses under its own flaws, and the bees survive while we perish. To top it off, the film closes with a haunting song about the cycle of life, death, and regret. Honestly, what were they thinking? Movies are supposed to end with hope, or at least a sequel tease, but Bugonia ends with meaning. And that's the worst sin of all. In the end, Bugonia isn't just a movie. It's a cinematic crime. It dares to be intelligent, satirical, and emotionally devastating when it could have been dumb, loud, and forgettable. For that, I condemn it as one of the greatest disasters of excellence. This movie doesn't explain itself. It doesn't soften the edges. It doesn't care if you're comfortable. It's strange, alienating, hypnotic. The kind of movie that sends people online immediately asking, did anyone else feel weird watching this? Which is the worst possible reaction a film can provoke. Art should be consumable, neat, easily summarized in a tweet. Bugonia said no. Then there's Dracula, A Love Tale, a film that resurrects something truly horrifying. Romantic sincerity. This Dracula isn't cool. He isn't quippy. He yearns. The film treats love as obsession, as violence, as tragedy, not as a joke. There's longing, there's faith, there's suffering, and not a single joke undercutting the emotion to reassure us that it's okay to feel something. Terrifying. Finally, Frankenstein, a movie that remembers the monster was never the point. First mistake, Del Toro actually cared. He poured his lifelong passion into this project, drawing from his childhood viewing of the 1931 film and his early reading of Mary Shelley's novel. Terrible idea. Adaptations are supposed to be soulless cash grabs, not deeply resonant works of art. Honestly, how dare he make something visually imaginative and thematically meaningful? And then there's the personal stuff. Del Toro parallels Victor Frankenstein's struggles with his own life, feelings of being misunderstood, his relationship with his parents, his artistic battles. A huge flaw. Come on, man. Movies should never be autobiographical explorations. They should be generic stories with no emotional connection. But Frankenstein insists on being a deeply personal artistic statement. Exhausting. Oh, and the themes? The film breaks down into 3 core explorations. Tale of the outcast, curse of conquerors, and fragility of innocence. That's way too organized. Themes should be random, inconsistent, and barely noticeable, if you even have any. But here, every scene resonates with meaning. It's almost like Del Toro wanted us to think. Disgraceful. Worst of all, Victor isn't even a scientist anymore. He's an artist driven by shame and entitlement, while the creature embodies pure innocence destroyed by humanity's cruelty. That's unforgivable. Everyone knows Frankenstein should be about lightning bolts and lab coats, not nuanced portrayals of ambition and innocence. Making the creature a mirror to humanity's failings? That's just too clever. And don't get me started on the trauma. Victor's flawed pursuit of power mirrors his father's treatment of him, leading to self-acceptance and redemption through understanding the creature as his son. That's too perfect, which is exactly the problem. Horror should never explore intergenerational trauma or redemption arcs. If I wanted catharsis, I'd go to therapy, not the movies. In the end, Frankenstein fails spectacularly at being bad. It dares to be personal, thematically resonant, and emotionally devastating when mediocrity would have been so much easier. For that, I condemn it as one of the greatest disasters of excellence. Instead of flashy horror, we get grief, responsibility, creation without accountability. The film actually asks, what does it mean to bring something into the world and abandon it? Which feels like an aggressive question to ask in a franchise landscape. This isn't a monster movie, it's a moral reckoning. And that's the problem right there. So yes, 2025 was indeed a terrible year for movies. Too much care, too much craft, too much sincerity, and not nearly enough content. If this keeps up, we might actually have to engage with art again. And frankly, I'm not ready for that. If you enjoyed the video, please let me know. Tell me if you agree with me. Tell me if you don't agree with me. Tell me anything. But remember, Happy New Year. And thank you for giving me your time today. Peace.